for Valentine's Day.
That was good. Yeah, I can't wait anymore. All right. So I'm going to close this window that was giving us the ad earlier, as much fun as that was. We'll be 1 minute early. Everybody else can just shuffle in the back as they like. Todd Robinson, you can find my email on my YouTube channel under the About section. All right, looks good. Last time we had some glitch with the sound and the audio. How's it look today, everybody? Is it better? Does it look good? I got the live stream here. We have Phil moderating. We'll see if we need a moderator, see if everybody is doing well. John Cordy says, Mirror Keith. I don't get it. What do you mean, John? Does everybody watch John Cordy's channel? A whole bunch of people are here. I think probably from John's. Oh my God. Zach Child signed on from Ask Zach. Everybody's scrolling by. Got 180 people already. Let me know where you're from. I got some of that earlier in the stream. Always curious to know where people are. Very good. Thanks, Matthew. Appreciate that. Audio's good. Good. All right, I was playing with that. So I'm working on the Danelectro short history, and it's a long enough history. Surprised me. I didn't know much about it. If it doesn't work out well, we're going to blame Zach, because Zach has been dying for me to do the Danelectro one. There's actually a great reference book about Danelectro called Guitars from Neptune. I'll explain that in a second. And I was talking to my good buddy from 5 Watt, well, not 5 World, from FYD Amps, Dan Lurie earlier. He'll probably be here. And he said, hey, you know, I got an old Airline amp in, which is, of course, Montgomery Ward's. Sears and Roebuck, Montgomery Ward's were the two first customers for Danelectro. They were actually an amplifier company in the 1940s. He worked for Nathan Daniel, worked for Nathaniel Daniel, right? Nathan Daniel, yeah. Worked for Epiphone for a short time, but he started building amps on the side. And he was literally building amps at his house and selling them through Sears when Sears was a fledgling company as well. So here's a guy at home building amps and doing them from there and selling them, you know, through their store chain and eventually this gigantic catalog. Danelectro was actually the first company to build an amp factory first in Red Bank, New Jersey. And this is in the late 40s, early 50s. And they didn't start building guitars until Sears asked them to in the late 50s, which all of this was new to me. That's the weirdness. And they started doing guitars at that time. And so guitars, Danelectro they did solid bodies for a couple years, and then they did the ones that we're all familiar with the poplar frame and Masonite and Formica, that's the one we all, I think, know. And then probably the DC59 is the one. And that's the one that I'll be focusing on mostly probably because of Jimmy Page. I mean, the black one with the Jimmy Page. And then Jimmy Page even pulled that out in the, Might Get Loud movie. I mean, he's still using that same guitar. So I didn't know any of this stuff. Robert Baker's here. Very, very cool, Robert, that you showed up. I didn't know any of that Danelectro stuff. It's not an easy book to find. They're out there. It's out of print. I actually reached out to one of the co-authors who still builds custom lipstick tube pickups, which is very cool. I'll include all of that stuff in the links when I do the video for next week when I put it out. So on the stream today, we're gonna talk a little bit more about Dano, since I just gave you a gloss of the history in about 4 minutes. We can go to questions. If you have specific questions for me, as opposed to just talking among yourselves, that's cool too, of course. It's just all about community. Go ahead and put my name, just do the @5wattworld if you're on a computer. Get my attention that way, and I'll try to do it. If you find out that it gets too busy, we've got about 250 people on the stream already. Go ahead and use the top chat. I'm not shy about those kinds of things. There's also the tip jars over in the description. All that kind of stuff is trying to making our way through things. So I back when I had 2-3 dozen guitars, I actually had a bunch of inexpensive guitars. That was actually part of my thing. How I ended up doing this channel was that I owned a lot of inexpensive guitars. I just have a thing about cheap guitars. I really dug the Danos that they did in the 90s. I had a baritone, I had a 12-string, never got a double neck. I always thought that was way cool, but never had one of those. I had a regular DC59 that actually matched the one I still have. The only bass I own is a Longhorn short scale Longhorn bass that they did in the 90s, and it's this big surprise, right? It's kind of a dark denim blue sparkle. You can almost not see the sparkle. So it's a very cool thing. So that's the only one I still have. I'll get that out maybe for the video. I got RJ Ronquillo to play on the video. I'm very excited to get RJ playing. He sent me the stuff already. RJ's ridiculous. He's a great guitar player. And I had an email exchange with Steve Rediger, the president of Danelectro, that Rick Beato connected me with him. And really nice guy, really helpful. Sent me that bright red PNG of the fairly recent Dano 59 to put in the thumbnail. So that was very, very cool. So I don't know how many people out there have had Danos. Somebody wrote early in the stream that they don't want to they don't want the stream to talk them into having a Dano. It's pretty inexpensive way to fall off the wagon if you're gonna do that. Yeah, S.E. Nesbitt says loves 12 strings, hates tuning them. There's the old joke about mandolins is you spend half the time playing and half the time tuning. So Steve is Dan almost nice. Yeah, Robert would know these people. Robert's been in the biz here for quite a while. So very cool stuff. So how many folks have a Dano? Let's put that there. Uh-oh, TCM's here. How you doing, Perry? Carrier has arrived. That's great. Baritone mandolin things. Yeah, so it's interesting. So Nate Daniels, like Leo Fender, was not a guitar player, and he's an engineer. And he basically, in interviews you'll read, he'll say that he didn't approach it as what have they built for guitars before. I actually, it's in my script, I got this part done already. He said that he basically looked at the electric guitar and said, what is this essentially from an engineering standpoint? Which I think really kind of says a lot about where he ended up. They were looking for ways to make guitars inexpensively. He knew his main customer was going to be Sears. Sears were the ones asking him to build the guitars. So he knew that they had to be inexpensive, which he did really well. He had a lot of really interesting, controversial kind of things. He didn't believe that a truss rod was a long-term solution. He thought it was something that was just not going to last. So he actually dropped a square tube of aluminum in the neck, the whole length of the neck, and actually on the later guitars it went right down under the bridge. Right down to the bridge. And that was the stabilizing thing. And anybody that's had a DC59 knows that you adjust the string height from the bridge. And I've had both style bridges over time, though I don't have any of those guitars now. So it's very cool. So let's see. I'm trying to catch things as the stream goes by. The Trucker Ed Show says our Danelectro is good for country music. You'll see. RJ did over a jam to sort of intro and outro like I usually try to do, and then he did a great demo of just the DC59 anniversary, the 60th anniversary, just the guitar, and he switches pickups and things, and it was very cool. It was very, very cool. And I have to admit that I'm a real sucker for a shiny guitar. So all these sparkling things really get me going, and I have to resist. So the volume is really low. All right, I can adjust that. I'll crank that up a little bit. I got an overhead mic, and we'll see if we can bring it closer without getting it out of phase here. There we go. Now we're in the frame. There we go. Is that a little better? I could talk louder as well. Thanks. Good. So somebody's asking about the humbuckers, but let me talk about the pickups for a minute, because of course that's a big thing. This is a great. I think it's. I had to go double check my meaning with the word apocryphal. It's a story that's well accepted, though not necessarily true. And I think everybody's heard probably the story about the lipstick tube pickups being a cheap way to build a pickup, that they had this big leftover batch of lipstick tubes, and then they figured out a way to put a pickup in it. In fact, I guess Jerry Jones is well known, the guy from Nashville who built copies of these, really high quality copies, said that he thought that they were probably purchased from the same company he used in Connecticut. And they actually weren't plated or anything. They had to be plated by them. And then they did work out a very simple, and the pickup, if you've ever had one apart, I haven't, but I've done all the reading now, obviously, is that it actually is just wound right around the magnet. The coils are right around the magnet. There's no bobbin. Let's see. Oh, I got a nice top chat already. Thanks, Alex. Alex Davidson says, thanks for all you do for us guitar nerds. Thank you, Alex. So it's an interesting thing. And then of course the pickup mounting system is a completely interesting thing, where you raise and lower it from the back of the guitar where it's screwed through, and there's just two little feet that kind of come down from the pickup to hold it in place. So they're very low output pickups, which kind of fits me. I like that. I like low output pickups. So that was a thing that I really liked about them when I had them. Let's see, what else you guys want to talk about with Danos? The amps actually have really kind of come back and recently kind of become more collectible. Airline was the in-house brand at Montgomery Ward, and then of course Silvertone with both the guitar branding and then the amp branding at Sears and Roebuck, and then later just became Sears. Also was that. Danelectro actually reserved the right to sell his amps under his own name, but it sounds like, from what I can gather, he only really did that locally down near where he lived. Somebody's asking, what was my first guitar? I actually talk about that in a video. My first guitar was an acoustic guitar that I wanted an electric guitar, of course. I was, I think, 12 or 13. And a friend of the family, an 85-year-old woman's father, had owned this guitar. And it was Brazilian rosewood. It was a little parlor guitar. It was about 100 years old. Can you hear you say, welcome to 5 Watt World? Yeah. That's what we want to hear. Welcome to 5 Watt World. I slur right through that. I do it because I'm usually at the beginning of a filming and I'm always nervous. So I like go blasting through that. Anyway, so my father, I don't want to buy this guitar. I wanted one of those, Danelectros from the back of the Sears catalog. And my father convinced me to go ahead and get the acoustic guitar. I had nylon strings on it forever. And then I finally went ahead and had the neck reset when I lived in Vermont. I had the neck reset, and then actually I had it for a number of years. And when I was cleaning out guitars, there was a point when I was down to 3 electric guitars, and I have more now because of the channel. But I had a friend who really was looking for that kind of guitar, and I sold it to him. And I was good, and I think it was a real thing for me. I talk about it in that video. I can't remember which video. I think it's in the Enough video, maybe Enough in the Short Histories. And that was, and it's good. It lives back in New Hampshire. So, okay, we got a lot of questions now. Let me roll back. What is Masonite? So I always thought Masonite was, Dylan Santori asked, I always thought Masonite was a type of plywood, but actually it's not. It's more like fiberboard. It's literally wood fibers pressed together in some sort of a medium, which was very interesting to me. Yeah, Phil, if they put at 5 Watt World, you don't have to go ahead and repost them. I'll just scroll back and do them here. So it's that, and then there's the Formica over the top. All those crazy patterns and things. Those are basically colors that they would have made countertops out of, or in a diner or in a bathroom in the 50s. And anybody's been in like their great grandmother's house, you can see all that stuff on old countertops and stuff. It happens all the time. Zaprock Skull is reminding us that they did 6-string basses, and he's right. They were the first one doing 6-string basses. I started to talk about this. So Nate Daniels really didn't have a preconceived notion of what you can and can't do. So he just lit into doing all kinds of stuff. He actually was an innovator in amp design as well. He was one of the first people to put a tremolo in an amp. And he was one of the first people to put out a standalone reverb. He called it an echo unit, but it really was a reverb unit. And so when it came time to do guitars, they wouldn't hesitate. Finally somebody sees the Snorlax. This actually makes an appearance in some videos. My son was into Pokemon. And we were at the store. I think we were at Walmart. And I think we got him a Pikachu. And I always thought this looked like a Buddha. This is like, I had a bass player that a piano player in my band that I always said was the Buddha of the band business. So this has always lived in the studio. I'm not a Pokemon guy, but the Snorlax, doesn't look, I think his superpower is sleeping. So what's better than that? I always need to be reminded to calm down just a little bit, hence my old nickname from Beato. So anyway. So yeah, 6-string basses were a big early thing, and of course they did the 6-string basses that got used for all the Tic Tac lines that got used in Nashville early on, and getting all doubled up. Quentin James is asking me to say hello to my little bird Emmett. Okay, little bird Emmett. All right, if I was Jeff McErlane, I might say, what am I, a dancing monkey? I understand. I am a dancing monkey, and I'll do whatever's required on the chat. Let's see what we got for questions here. A good Dano to start off with, if you don't want to spend a ton, just dip your toes in the brand. It's really hard. The first ones that they ever built were the U1 and the U2. One being the 1 pickup and the 2 being the 2 pickup model. And you see people use those still. People often use them for slide. I think that's because of the low output pickups. And they're inexpensive. A lot of famous stories about people using Danelectros are because they were inexpensive guitars and available. One of my favorite is the story about Entwistle using it on the bass solo for My Generation. And this is to tell you how hard he was hitting it. The story goes that he was playing the guitar, playing the bass, short scale, hitting it so hard he broke the strings. Well, there was nobody in London who had the strings, so he bought another one. He bought another bass, and supposedly he used 3 of them to get the take that's on the record. I don't know if that's a true story. We can't ask him now, but I always thought that was a great story. The idea that these were inexpensive, and you'd see, I think even Page, Page had it set up in that tuning, and that's kind of like that guitar has lived its whole life. Is that so? So I think that's what that is. So it's very cool. So it would be kind of hard not to say that you should do one of the U guitars, but use DC59s, which are kind of the one. I mean, lots of access. They weigh about 6 pounds because they're hollow. The original bodies are poplar. I haven't reached out to Steve at Dano to confirm that they're actually still using a poplar frame, but that's really what it is. Yeah, I think the Hugh G says that, yeah, the necks are really comfortable. So anyway, Paul Hobson says his first guitar was a burgundy and cream Danelectro. Burgundy actually was one of the first colors that the factory ever did. Dano, wood or metal bridge? So that's a good question. That's a really good question. I was talking to Dan Lurie about this earlier. The original bridges had a rosewood bridge. This was all just a solid piece of rosewood. It was about tone, but it also was about inexpensive to put together. Supposedly Page modified his to put a different style bridge on, and you'll see that when they first came out with the reissues in the 90s, they called that the 59 Mod or 59M. And now they build that guitar both ways with both styles of bridge. And Perry's asking me if Page played that in the studio or just live. I think in Just Get It Might Get Loud, he says that he played that guitar in the studio and then used it on the road. But you guys know these things at least as well as I do. John Webby's asking about small amps. We're going to come back. We'll come back to that. Let's do this a little bit more Dano. We're only about 20 minutes into Dano here. Steve Morse. Steve Morse says he loves the idea of getting more for less. Yeah, it's pretty hard to watch RJ play this Dano and not feel just a tinge of guilt if you're me about what do you need all this money in a guitar for, Keith? Look, this is what RJ can do with this $500 guitar, because they actually have gotten more expensive lately. I think they're up, the ones that are, there's a couple of 60th anniversaries left over on Sweetwater, and I think they're at $499 asking, so that's pretty tough. Shawnee, we're going to come back to the Silver Jubilee question, because I actually built a 5-watt silver at one point with Dan Lurie that Dan Lurie designed for me. So we'll come back to the hybrid amp question too, if that's okay with you guys. So let's do that then. So then, of course, you got to remember that once they started doing the reissues that they did in Korea, there's a great video that Josh Scott, who's actually a friend of 5-watt here on the channel, that Josh did when he interviewed when there was a new series of pedals coming out, obviously pedals, where Steve Ruttiger tells a story about the first year that those big, the big Danelectro pedals in the solid metal cases, they came out. They knew that they wanted to have them at a low price point. They came out and they sold 175,000 of them in a year. And they, in the pedal world, you have to understand that if a company does 50,000 pedals in a year, that's crazy. I mean, that's like MXR, JHS. I mean, that's Keeley. Those are huge, huge numbers. And so it's funny on the interview when Ruttiger says that to Josh Scott, he almost falls out of his chair laughing because it's just a gigantic number. And so they, launched him at an NAMM show, and then the next year they came back, and he says this in the interview. He came back and he said, all the people were like, "Hey, where are the guitars? We figured you'd have the reissues here this year," and they had to scramble, and they actually ended up doing the reissue guitars for the next NAMM show. So, David Pierce lipstick pickups are quieter than single coils. They are, but they're also probably 50% less output. So probably what you're dealing with partly there is just that it's pushing the amp. It's getting the preamp section of your amp just a lot less attention. It's just sending much less signal there. So I think they do have a reputation as being quieter, but really they're just playing quieter. I don't currently own any Dano pedals. RJ Orthman is asking. The second generation were the plastic with the small cases, and I think they refer to those as the food series. They were all named after foods. And the French Toast. So Steve Rudiger, actually, if you go back, he's a pedal guy. He's the guy who designed the Fox. What is it? The Fox Super Fuzz in the 70s, late 70s. And he just reissued it actually on Danelectros brand, and so he was a pedal guy, and so he knew when he went to that, the French Toast in those small pedal series is actually an exact circuit clone of the original Fox, Super Fuzz, and for that reason, those are sort of collectible, and those little pedals work out great. During your research, how much did you find out about the Coral? You're talking about the sitar. What's the guy's name? Bell is his last name. I'm going to cover that, of course, because it's a real part of the history. Although, like I said, in a half an hour, you have to pick a model and really do that. I used to own Reed Dillashaw says Danelectros Daddy-O is a great OD. I used to own that. And the overdrive and the other one. They're all gone now. I try to own only enough pedals. It's good to just come up with an arbitrary way of doing this, I think. I try to own only enough pedals, even for testing within the channel, that will fit on 2 pedal train 16s Metros. So, 2 pedal boards that are like, they all fit there. And when they top out there, then it's time to clean the rack and clean those out. Somebody's talking about the Strandbergs in the background. Everybody wants to know how they hang. There's a little knob on the top of this. That's how they do it. Tartan Phantom is asking if we talked about Jerry Jones. We did talk a little bit, just briefly, about Jerry, because there was an interview where he was talking about the lipstick tube pickups. One of the cool things about the Jerry Jones is that they were much more reliable for people to take them on the road. I know David Grissom has a double neck Jerry Jones that he used when he was out with the Dixie Chicks. I saw them on that tour, and that was the good news about Jerry Jones. But I was talking to Zach Childs, and he said basically people were also critical that they sort of built them better. And the fact is, a lot of the mojo came from how funky they were. Zaprock is saying, is any Danelectro in the works video in the works? Yeah, that's what we're talking about. We're going to do a short history. We're doing a short history on the Danelectros coming right up. So one of the things I asked on the community post this week, and it'd be great if I could get folks to talk about it here, because I always can use more information, is other players, especially famous players that might have used a Danelectro, like a DC59 in particular, on a particular tune, because you kind of hear that everybody had one of these, or there was one in the studio and they picked it up, especially like the sitar. There would be some choral bell, sitar part there. And anybody has that, email me or put it in the comments here, throw it up here now. We can talk about it. I actually got great feedback from people giving me specific examples of where Trainwreck amps were used. Separate from, there was a whole bunch of videos made by a guy from Nashville that were done. And I, the vagaries of YouTube are such that I didn't even find those when I was doing my research, because they haven't gotten a ton of views, which is, a very sad statement about the algorithm. Somebody's asking if we're going to do COVID masks. No, I'm kind of hoping that we won't need COVID masks by the time we could get those into production. I'm kind of just, as you can see, I'm just in the same space I was in before that all this craziness started, and I'll be here when it's over, probably. Somebody, No Name, is saying that Mark Knopfler uses them. Yeah, and actually there's a lot of really good pictures of Mark using them out on the road. So it's really good. I saw when somebody asked, I was going by, if we're going to do more bass short histories. I am going to do them. Hey, David Burkhart. I am going to do more short histories on basses. I have a big list. At the first live stream, somebody asked if I could share the ominous list. I could, except it changes all the time. I should have these kind of things on the desktop here. I could just drag them over and drop them on the stream. I'm still learning my way here. And they're yeah, it's a thing. That's very cool. We're going to do silver tones made by Danelectro. I am, Barnett 125. They made them all. Oh, well, that's not true. I guess they later Sears had other companies making them. One of the interesting things about the corporate history is that when Nathan Daniel cashed out, sold the company, I think it was 68. I'm really right about at that point of working on the script. He sold the company for $6 million. It's a crazy amount of money in 1968. And the next year, Sears dropped their contract with them. So the company really took a pounding, and I don't think they ever recovered, survived through that. Dylan Santori says, got to run, but thanks for doing the stream. Thanks for coming by, Dylan. Johnny Buckland used one on. This is exactly what I'm looking for. Thanks, Luke. That's really good. Titus Reagan Johnson says the EVH used a Danelectro neck. There's a great photograph of Pete Townsend swinging what looks like a Telecaster, but it clearly has a Danelectro neck on it. You can tell that they're just breaking too many guitars, for the number of shows that they had booked, and they're just slapping together things that were going to be destroyed in the course of the evening. So that was a very cool thing. My guitar was a Silvertone acoustic. I wonder if the acoustics were built by Danelectro. I haven't really run into that. Somebody's saying that the sitar was used on a show. So Tom, you must have been on YouTube early if your whole name is just Tom. Somebody mentioned that the Dano sitar, there's a kids cartoon show in the UK in the 70s called Sir Prancelot. Remember, the theme tune is played by Alan Parker. Oh, and then they cut you off. They don't let you go forever. I know, because I'm a long-winded typer here. Andy racks the cams. Let's come back. If you want to talk about small amps again, we'll do that after. Fat Philosopher is a long-time subscriber, wants to know if the pick is in my pocket. I just reach for it, and there it is. And there it is. Probably not going to focus. Wants to focus on my head. That's the pick. I actually used two different picks, and my copyright paperwork is almost done. And then I'm going to let the guys at Blue Chip, because I just love the guys at Blue Chip, I'm going to let them do my logo on a pick. So don't all call them tomorrow, but this is the other one. This is what they call the large jazz shape, and it has the same rounded tip as the big TPR. But I find that it's a much smaller pick. It's much easier for me to hybrid pick, and I'm trying to work on that, than it is the other one. And so this is a 35. And then I think Perry has one of these. And then this is a 60. So that's an extra heavy. That's a pretty one. And that's the one that lives in my pocket. That's the one that Ben gave me. The pick. That's right, Fat. So if your login is Fat Philosopher, we probably should just call you Philosopher, I think. Yeah. Trucker Ed says, hey, thanks for the top chat. Alan Jackson had Danelectro baritone on a lot of songs. You can see it in the music videos. Cool. I'll go digging it up and see if I can throw that stuff up in the video. Always a good thing to have. Sean is a Cubs fan. Yeah, I'm not a Pokemon fan. We already talked about the Snorlax. So you have to hit me up on the side. Right? You can email me if you want the whole story again. Somebody asked if those are Abasi concept guitars. They're not. Tosin is a friend of a friend, but those are Strandbergs. The one on the Butterscotch is I think I had it out last time. It's a customized Bowden Salin that is one pickup for the two videos that I'm going to do. I'm going to do a video on Blackguard Telecasters, and I'm sure the purists are flipping out right now as I say that, as if for me that's my Blackguard. And then I'm also going to do one on Esquires. I was going to do one on one pickup guitars, but honestly, the videos, I think that actually probably should make one on Juniors, on Les Paul Juniors, and then make one on Esquires, because I think that would do much better, and I think it's great. And that's a great guitar. The one next to it is with their Bowden Classic, and I'm actually putting together a new pick guard for that. That's Tortoise. The other one is actually the third one. For a while, it was the three guitars. The other one is this. I used to joke that this is my Les Paul. So this is a Salin that I customized with Lindy Fralin. It's got a Lindy Fralin Mini in the front and a Lindy Fralin split blade here. I would have to say that, I was kind of going for a Les Paul Deluxe. It's multi-scale. It's 25 to 25 and a half. the guys, I bought all of these guitars. The Butterscotch the guys sent me to use for the videos, but these I had bought, and I actually there was a time when the 3 electric guitars I owned were 3 Strandbergs. And it was funny, I just did an interview with Ryan Bruce on Riff Spears and Gear. It's gonna come out Saturday. Ryan told me on Saturday Fluff. And we were talking about how I kind of have this tube background, but at the same time, I've always been very interested in new stuff. Daddy Midwest knows, the shot of the closet, all same shirts. Yeah, we'll come back to that. I usually ban people for talking about either the beard or the shirts, but I'll be very forgiving today. Yeah, John J. Trum has asked to say yes to the short history of the videos. 2 bobs worth. Our modern Dano is worth the money. You know, I feel like such an old guy. I should tell a dad joke when I tell this, because the fact is, I think $4.99, when you look at the fact that, you know, what prices Squires are these days, or that the Mexican standard Fenders are creeping towards $1,000, I think even, you know, $4.99 is great. You can regularly still buy them for $300 on Reverb. So I think the ones are. I have not played one that's made in the last 5 years. The guitars that I had that were built in the 90s were solid, rock solid guitars. I mean, I wouldn't have hesitated. There's actually a guy who's followed the channel for a long time. He's a great jazz guitar player from down in Asheville, North Carolina. And he uses a Dano on a gig, on a jazz gig. He takes it out. He uses a kind of a bright, modern jazz tone, but it sounds great. And he's got videos of that up. So somebody's asking if I'm going to do a piece on Ampeg. I plan to do a video on the Ampeg flip top. I have Bjorn Anderson saying a piece on Ampeg on the B15. That's on the list. And the cool thing about that is that Dan Lurie designed, and then I built a B15 single channel B15 bass amp that fits. That's the whole. It's just one channel of the original 2-channel amp, because the original B15s had an accordion channel and a bass channel. So it just fits in a champ size head. It's like this big. And, you know, they're like 27, 28 watts. It's a pair of 5881s. So I'll do that. And I'm looking for a bass player to do the playing. So I'll find somebody locally. L. Scott Moore says, is there a market for clip-on headstocks? Not here, there isn't. I love the thing there. And Perry's having some grief over the fact that I don't have a DGT anymore currently. When I got the Strandbergs was when I sold my collection of DGTs, and I had 3 or 4 DGTs. Yeah, Matthew Paluch, is that how you pronounce that? Paluch? Tom Petty had a Longhorn bass with the Wilburys. Yeah, they actually used a number, but he used that in the videos a lot. He was playing bass on a lot of those. Bo Dan Peterson says, could you make a video on Rickenbacker guitars and basses? All of those are on the list. I think I have all of the currently available books on Rickenbacker and a couple of out-of-print ones that I collected last year. I'm also thinking of doing a video on, I think I mentioned this on the last stream, on guitars of the Beatles. That's something I'd be interested in doing just for me, which is, of course, you know, has a lot to do with getting excited about a particular topic. Is picking something that's exciting, because it's so much research. That's a very, very big deal. Jan Alexander says, breakfast with 5 Watt World, great way to start the day. Where is Jan Alexander that it's breakfast time? Hugh G, reactions, thoughts on Sun amps. I don't really have a lot of experience with Sun amps, separate from the high-powered ones that seem to be favored by, you know, really heavy guys, heavy metal guys, because you can get such good note separation. Rick owns one, actually. So Perry's saying, when you're ready for the Rick bass thing, let me know ahead of time. I just know the person you're playing. Oh, excellent. That'd be great. Yeah, the Rickenbacker bass thing is on the list. I actually have made the list for this spring, and I'd put it here. I'd put it out there, except you guys would immediately try to fix it for me. Well, there you go. See, you mentioned Ryan Bruce, and he appears. Riffs, Beards, and Gear in the house, ladies and gentlemen. He's going to jump into it. He's giving us a lunch order. We could have taken care of that for you, Ryan. You just need to let us know what you need in advance. So, Sean Hershey, have Andy Babish in your neck of the woods? R.E. Rickenbacker. I don't know Andy Babish. Somebody's asking if I ever thought about doing a short history on a genre. What I have actually started doing is making a list of artists that I would enjoy doing a short history on, and there's a number. So I thought about doing that. I was surprised at how well the short history of the Beano album did. So I've actually been looking at records. I talked to Zach Broyles at Mythos Pedals, who's a real scholar when it comes to early ZZ Top, because I think doing an early ZZ Top, maybe the third ZZ Top 3, would be a great record to do. There's great stories about it. The difficulty with a ZZ Top record, of course, is trying to sort out anything from what the Reverend has said over the years. That's always a tough one. Philip Iacone, your videos have forced me into buying a Jaguar, a Jazzmaster, and a Firebird. Love your thoughtfulness and thoroughness. Thanks, Keith. Well, I often talk about this. I'm really not ultimately responsible for people wanting to buy guitars. I figured that existed before I got here. So that's. But I'm glad. I hope you're enjoying those guitars. I always think. Philosopher's asking, did I read the book Play It Loud by Tolinsky? No, I just ordered it. I'm also going to do, as I said, I'm going to do a video on blackguards. I'm also going to do the Les Paul video. It was so big and it was really early in the short histories that I'm going to go back and do one just on bursts. And I've started to collect books on bursts with getting some good recommendations from people. If there's other books specifically on just bursts, let me know. Short history, the first Boston album would take me back to high school. Sir Lister of Smeg. That's something that was my junior. What year? The first Boston record was 77, 78. Help me, people. Come on. Somebody's asking if I thought about. Somebody actually suggested that I do a short history on guitar picks. That's not on the list currently. Jonathan G says that ZZ Top did a number of those first 3 records. Yeah, they did them all in the same studio, same producer, right near your house. Well, we'll just have to make a field trip then, probably. Everybody's disagreeing. Okay, we're getting a lot of votes for 76 for the first Boston record. So I'd have been a junior in high school if it came out that summer. I thought Star Wars was 77. Batman von Richthofen. Thanks for joining there, Baron. And if I can help anybody think about anything, I'm glad to have done something. First Boston was 76. Great, thanks. Jazzy, bluesy. Short history of Mel Bay. No, I took guitar lessons when I was 10 years old, and I had a rental, Silvertone-ish guitar, and with, strings this high off the fingerboard, and the guy made me do these exercises. I never forget. My pinky felt like it was going to bleed, and I promptly quit after about 4 or 5 months of lessons, and then I went back when I was 14 and kind of taught myself, and then took some lessons. Perry says Boston's a great record, but it's a Kodak engineer. I thought Tom Scholz worked at Polaroid. And yeah, I knew he did all the playing in his basement. Star Wars was definitely 77. Thanks, Jonathan. Aaron Shaw. Hey, thanks everybody. Aaron's here. Aaron, thanks for jumping on. Okay, so we got 20 minutes to go here, folks. So what do you want to talk about? Put your questions in with @5world, and I'll make sure to get to them or throw them in the top chat. Somebody's asking about Steinberger or Parker. Steinberger and Parker are both tough for me because I don't think either company is still available. So I'm trying to do things where people are learning about things that are still out there. Yeah, Perry, I think it was Polaroid. Somebody else was asking, I've seen you talk about the new Danelectros that Chicago Music Exchange is selling. Might be cool to look at the end of the video for your upcoming video. Oh, you mean look at the current ones at the end of the video? Yeah, I try to do that. The only times I can't is when, you know, the big histories where it takes too much time to get through it. That's a tough one. Steve Moore, a regular here. Talk about small amps. What do you want to talk about, Steve? Oh, I should go back and talk about the silver. So Bonamassa was hitting it big, and he was playing a rig when I was still living in Vermont and starting to build amps with Dan Lurie. And Dan would design them. We'd come up with an idea, and it was the time, I think I've said it here before, there was a time when I was really into 5-watt amplifiers. That's a good idea, Fluff. That's an excellent idea. I'll get right on that. Smash All Pots, I'm going to come back to the Mjolnir because I just got information on that today. So where was I talking about? Small amps. So I actually built a desktop champ. I should have it out. I'll have it out for the next live stream. I'll put it up here. I have an amp that Dan designed, which is a champ, but it's actually a full treble middle bass tone circuit. It's non-reverb. It's just a small. It's like this big, but it looks like a monoblock, like a hi-fi amp. Tubes up. Transformers are showing. It's literally, you could make an entire record with this one amp. It has the nice. I sent it to Rick Beato when he was still producing records, and he said it was the best clean sound he ever got on tape. That's the amp I have downstairs. Around that same time, we built a 5-watt overdrive special. And so I got to play with a lot of the Dumble ideas and the way that differs from a circuit that is straight Fender. And that was a real learning experience for me. And then on top of that, we built a Silver Jubilee. And it's interesting because that was the only 5-watt design that we did that was a little disappointing. That one really didn't. I think actually I ended up selling that back to Dan, and Dan used the parts to build, I think, more big verbs. So that was cool. All right, so let me double back and do some here. Stephen Pepperis is asking, is a Laney L5 Lionheart combo a good amp? I've never been able to play one. I dig it, but that would be very cool to check it out. It basically, as I understand it, it's a 5-watt power section on basically what is the same amp as their 20-watt. It's designed as a studio amp. And actually one of the reasons I haven't really searched them out more is that they are, they're heavy. They weigh what they weigh. Craig Myers is asking, related here, do you have a favorite 5-watt amp? In the current marketplace, I would always encourage people to look for a used champ. You can just do so much with a used champ. It's really incredible. It's a really great thing. Joseph Austin's in the top chat. Thanks a lot. Says really shows how much you care about the subject matter. I just kind of do I joke that I do a term paper every couple weeks. Doing the books videos were kind of just fun for me because that's something I try to do, as I'm always trying to read. Do that. Okay, so the 5-watt World Mjolnir that I've talked about since the Klon video is the first prototype's done. Zach just gave me a link to put up, and I'm going to make that available to members of 5-watt, Friends of 5-watt first. The first run will be just 25 pedals. These are hand-built pedals. They're white with just a little bit of metal flake in them. You can barely see it. Black text, blue light. Of course, the whole blue and white thing of 5-watt seems like my rig of choice these days. So it looks like they're going to be built in very small batches. And as I said, the first batch is going to be 25. And I'm going to reach out to all the friends of 5-watt tomorrow with an email making them available. And Perry already raised his hand for the first one, and I think he's ahead of me in line actually, which I'm okay with. That's good. Thanks, David. David's top chat. David Smythe. Thank you. All right, Fender Bass 6. You know, there's a great Fender Bass 6 video that Zach Childs made, and it would be interesting to do maybe do the Danelectro bass, 6-string basses, and the Fender Bass 6 at the same time. That would be an interesting crossover video because I think they sort of were reactions to each other at the same period of time. So that would be a cool thing to do. Let me get caught up here. Plans on histories of BC Rich, Dean, etc. Well, so I got out of high school in 1978. So BC Rich, like Hamer and Dean, were all custom guitars at the time. These were all hand-built guitars. This is long before they ever had a lesser price line. These were crazy expensive. The BC Riches, I remember driving to House of Guitars in Rochester, New York. I'm sure my parents didn't know I was doing that drive. I'm sure I wasn't old enough to be taking the car up into Rochester because I lived 45 miles away, and playing a Warlock. What were they like? These weird 10-string guitars, right? 2 low bass strings and then 4 pairs on top. These were amazing guitars and so far beyond the means of my apple picking, restaurant dishwashing self at the time. So those BC Rich and Hamer and all of those companies are still very much part of my history, and they are actually on the list. History of Vox guitars. Yeah, probably, but probably not really soon. Everybody has favorites, but that one's probably not high on the list right now. Let's see what else we got here. Harry's asking for a short, well, I'm not sure he's asking, or he's maybe saying that at this time in history we need a short history of Jefferson Starships knee deep in the hoopla. That's a little too probably on point. Mojo Joe says a polytone history for the jazzers. Well, it's interesting, I actually have right here next to me right now a Fender Tone Master Deluxe Tone Master, and a Fender Custom Shop 64 Deluxe, because and I actually use a solid state, a little DV Mark 12 for jazz, solid state amp, but I read that Jonathan Kreisberg uses a tube amp and a solid state amp in a pair, and so that's something that I've been interested in. Using a pair, and basically I was thinking about doing a video. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it now, on the lowest price deluxe and the highest price deluxe that's in the line right now. So that's the thing. Perry's telling Robert Baker to ask for one of the Froggy Bottom guitars. Is Robert need guitar advice? So the guy that built my acoustic that's in the closet behind me, maybe I'll pull it out sometime. We can do the tours a little bit at a time. I have an OM style acoustic guitar that was built by Adam Goldberg, who had worked at Froggy Bottom for 4 or 5 years. So that's something that I'm very fond of. Guten Tag to the Joost Donman in the Netherlands there. I've been studying my Dutch. I'm sure it's terrible. Josh Taft says, why does Fender call amps bassmen and use the word bass in a guitar amp? Because the bassman was really designed as a bass amp. If you go watch my short history of the Precision, it covers a little bit of the earliest stuff about bassmans. And then they just got repurposed. Thanks, Josh. Josh Smith. Video quality looks good. Thanks. All right, so the t-shirts, the shirts. You want to do that? You got to go there. More people are joking about the shirts. So in my closet, there are 3 of these. And then there are 2 new ones that are not as nice. These are just Levi's branded, so they change them all the time. This one is the one that all the videos are in. It's the uniform. I actually think it's kind of distracting for people that like wear all different things on their channel and all that kind of stuff. And I worked in higher ed long enough to understand that I think that stuff kind of does detract. So you will not be getting this history of the Snorlax on this channel, but I'm sure that's been covered before. but unless you mean this one, which I did earlier in the stream, you'll have to double back. So, okay, some of this stuff is just in the background. I have to learn to ignore that. Custom pickup companies is Glenn Miner how is saying pickup companies. That's an interesting thing because one of the videos, the video on Ibanez, on the Gems, kind of touches on the fact that it was in the late 70s that custom pickup companies even became a thing. And that would be pretty interesting, actually, to look into that. And Iron Green Studios, right, you said wear the same outfit every day. I actually have different shirts. I hate to break everybody's bubble around this, but I own some other shirts, and it usually is a signal that I'm not at work. If I'm working and I'm sitting here, I'm usually wearing the full... I used to live, as some people mentioned earlier, I used to live in Vermont, and somebody pointed out to me that a denim shirt and denim pants was referred to as a Canadian tuxedo, which I'd never heard before that. Griffith, who's your all-time favorite jazz guitarist? That's probably, oh, that's really tough. Probably until I was 30, I would have said Pat Metheny. And I still think he's probably one of the greatest living players. If you ask me now, probably if I'm going to reach for something, I would say it's probably Bill Frisell. The thing I love about Bill is he's got so much chops in reserve. That's just an incredible thing. Sean Hershey says he's guessing at my day job. I live in Ithaca because I worked at Ithaca College from 1985 to 1989. This is my day job. So if you've been giving me a pass based on the fact that this is something I did on the side, you can let that go. This is what I do now. I retired from the University of Vermont, where I was the registrar from 2001 till 2016. And I was an administrator and a musician on the side. So that's what I did all the time. Thomas Moore says, why did you go with the Hx Stomp versus the Pod Go? You already have nice amps, and did you use them models? For me, the Hx Stomp was an interesting exercise in, could you do it all with just a stomp? Like if you were going to do mostly recording, and you had a setup where you had a set of monitors, and you didn't have an amp yet, but you were maybe going away to college to a dorm room, and you were going to have to do recordings for assignments. You could, in my opinion, you could take a stomp and go. It was funny because it's when the white ones first came out, and somebody connected me, Rhett Schull, actually my buddy Rhett Schull connected me with Matt Ferguson at Line 6. And Line 6, great guys, really great guys. I actually did a meeting with them about the future of amps recently. And really interesting people, and they're really interested in where it's all going. But I was fascinated by this, and they sent me a black one, and I sold it, and I bought this one. So, oh, we just lost video. What's up with that? That's not good. Huh. I'm an external power, but it told me I ran out of battery. Hold on, folks. Oh, are you kidding? Sorry about the video, guys. Camera's crashing down here. Thanks, John. I did turn it on and off again. Can you still hear me? Oh, you know what? It's not the camera. Oh, yeah, it looks like it is the camera. It's not sending to OBS. Well, looks like we're done 5 minutes early here today, folks. I apologize for the short history on Keith's camera. Yeah, Robert, very short. It's a fairly new camera to me, and we're on external power, so it should be fine. So, this camera is let's tell everybody, it's a Lumix S5. Audio's okay. Yeah, I can see that. All right, we're going to do this. We're going to give you your last 5 minutes here without video. If I pay for Netflix or college, then I really have to pay. Somebody's saying that they have to, someone from Edward Dieger says he has to pay for my videos. You don't. All right, guys, so we're going to wrap it up here. Thanks for the attempt. Thanks. Hey, we were there. We were there for 55 minutes. I'll work this out, and we'll be back in 2 weeks. And thanks to everybody. And